know this is a time of some distress, and everyone is feeling either anxious about a relative or they are worried about the current situation in the country and about COVID. So I think it's also a good time to realize that and to at least recognize that somewhere we have failed as in perhaps we were overconfident. We thought that we had managed to control the situation, but we had not. So somewhere the systems are not working. And what coronavirus has done is that it has highlighted and it has really brought out inequalities, made them visible, which perhaps were being covered up before. And one of the inequalities that now it's actually a life or death issue is digital literacy, because you need it for your education, you need it for purchase of goods. um, Digital literacy is now required for getting a vaccine, and the procedure for getting a vaccine for the 18 to 44-year-old age group is not that easy. The CoWIN portal is not something that is easy to navigate. It does require some level of digital literacy. And I think that again, we were a bit overconfident when we thought that India is going to be able to withstand the lockdown and have online classes, and maybe those who are not able to access digital platforms are in rural areas or in maybe some tribal areas, but that's also not true. And the reason for having this webinar came about. Uh, we thought about it after the very tragic case of a student from Lady Shri Ram College who took her life because she was unable to afford the Wi-Fi connectivity and internet and access education online. So I think with COVID, it's really just made it very important to reflect, to think again: who are we leaving out? Who is not not benefiting from the technology that there is in place? Who is it that is suffering? And again, what COVID has taught everyone is that no one is safe until everybody is safe. So, equally, whether it has to do with education or whether it's with a vaccine or whether it's your basic rights to your right to life and livelihood, you are all going to be affected if one person is left out. So for this reason, we are hosting this discussion today on digital literacy and the digital divide for which an overview will be presented by Barsha Chakrabarti from Breakthrough, and then Ms. Vandana Madan from Janki Devi Memorial College. One thing that I do want to say before handing over to Jyoti is that we have Women Power Connect has a very good relationship with Janki Devi College. One of a German PhD student supported by the FES had developed a module on the bystander intervention program, which we have been implementing in Janki Devi Memorial College. And I'm hopeful that as gradually we'll be able to continue with that. So with these few words, I'll hand over to Jyoti from the FES to say a few words.
Thank you so much, Gayatri. Good evening, everyone. I especially welcome Vandana ma'am, and also a warm welcome extended to Barsha Chakrabarti. A very good evening to all the participants. The program is for the students and for basically delving deep into this topic of digital divide in education. Thank you, Gayatri, for setting the context and letting the group know as to why we decided on this topic, which is so pertinent in these times. Before I go a little more into the topic, I would just like to say a few words for the organization I represent. That you already made a reference to this Friedrich Ebert Stiftung. So I just want to speak a little more on that because we are a German foundation dedicated to the principles of peace, solidarity, and social justice. From our core values and missions of promoting social justice, we derive the value of promoting gender justice. And when you talk about gender justice at this point of time, I think it is very pertinent to speak about digital inclusion. Friedrich Ebert Stiftung has offices in about 100 countries worldwide. In Asia, we have presence in almost all Asia and East Asian countries. We have been active in India since 1983. I just want to give a little more background on how the political foundations in Germany work. Germany has this unique system of having foundations which are affiliated to political parties, FES being close to the values of the Social Democratic Party. And the idea is that through their international work, the values and principles for which the party stands, that can carry out their work in other countries as well. So these values are very well reflected in our country office work. And in the gender unit of our India office, we've been working on women in work, women in politics, and on the issues of gender sensitization. Gender mainstreaming and gender sensitization are things which are, I think, most difficult to put into practice and to get into the systems. But also, I believe they're also most crucial, and hence our work on these issues continues. With a series of gender logs that we conduct, we want to have a larger outreach to young people of all genders. And we want to be able to have platforms for open discussions and new ideas, which we can kind of hopefully see some kind of changes in the policies in time to come. In the last few years, we've had gender logs on wide-ranging issues such as home-based workers, violence in the natal family, substantive equality, and more recently, we had one last year on sexual harassment in digital spaces. As Gayatri already mentioned, these are like chaotic, confusing, very challenging times, and a lot of us have been thrown off gear. And I think it's also the time, all the more, to kind of, take the challenges head on and stand together, show solidarity to, to our societies, to people around us, to communities, get linkages going. We've seen enormous and laudable positivity and resilience all around us, and we seem to be responding to the challenges of, these crazy times almost on a daily basis, on an hourly basis, if I may say so. And we learn also that it's the spirit of togetherness and positivity that kind of keeps us going, and actually it's the only way forward. Having said this seemed to be just the right time to give the floor to the youth, to speak to them about this topic and to understand better how the youth is coping as far as digital divide is concerned, or what are their views on digital divide, even if you've not kind of experienced it at a very personal level. And we hope to kind of have the spotlight on the ways ahead. And here we are today. So I wish all of us empowering discussions and really look forward to the inputs of the students and the speakers. So with these words, I hand over back to Gayatri, and thank you very much.
So I think we can now start with the presentations from the resource persons. Aisha, if you could take over.
So good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Moving forward, I would like to invite our first resource person, Ms. Barsha Chakraborty. Barsha is presently working at Breakthrough India, responsible for digital media engagement, advocacy, and partnerships. She has been part of various civil society, UN Sustainable Development Goals status reports, and has contributed in analyzing existing policies as a gender and digital media specialist. She has experience working on training and curriculum development and has contributed a module on digital media literacy as a part of training and resource material for wellness of school-going children. She has more than 11 years of experience working as a gender analyst within the field of policy and knowledge creation. She started her journey as a development professional with Safai Karamchari Andolan and has worked with Action Aid on implementing development programs for more than half a decade. So over to you, Varsha.
Thank you, Aisha. Thank you, Gayatri. Thank you very much for this opportunity. It's very interesting. Do I have like around 10 minutes? I'll put a timer.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I'll quickly start because I have a lot to say and there's very limited time. So at this point of time, and what Gayatri and Jyoti was talking about, and especially Gayatri mentioned that gradually we are getting more and more dependent on digital media, digital platforms and digitalization. Like everything is getting digitalized. Even for a vaccination, you have to digitally register yourself and then get vaccine. So given the situation at this point of time, this whole force of digitalization, there are two very important things we need to look at. One is the access and control, and the behavior. I'll first little bit talk about like access and control. So it's been kind of universally proved that women have lesser access to digital devices. And even if women have access to digital devices, that device mostly used by the entire family. So even if woman buy one mobile phone with her own money, not necessary that the woman is able to use that device herself for her own usage. But mostly it's used by the children of the family. If you see the online classes are happening, it's also like mostly one mobile, and mostly people are sharing the device. So that is one part of it. The second part of it is like the behavior as in what do we understand by digital media literacy. Like when we are talking about we have so much of digitalization, but we have very little digital media literacy. And we tend to believe that WhatsApp and Facebook is internet, but it's not, right? So whenever anybody like in the villages, when we go and we talk to the primary caregivers and health workers, and ask them like how do you use internet, what are the features you use on internet, and they mostly say it's WhatsApp and Facebook. And they have never maybe heard of Google, then never heard of other way to use digital media. And this entire Greta push to use everything getting digitalized, like all the schemes getting digitalized. You can only get information, you can only register yourself through digital medium, is actually making them more isolated from the entire process. So for example, before, if I want to know about widow pension, I can go to like a panchayat center or some center where I can get some in-person information, or the access, like the money used to come in the post office, so you can go and like you can have like a direct access. But at this point of time, most of the notification comes in SMS, or you have this larger push of like if you go to this whole panchayat and then they'll ask you to register yourself through internet. Even for the vaccination you can see. So not necessary now if I don't know what is internet and I don't know how it needs to be done. And always when we talk about internet, we have this imagination of like a young group of people who are like media savvy and who checking OTT platforms and stuff. But we always forget that as a chunk of women, it's very difficult for them to use internet. It's very difficult for them to access internet or learn internet in order to get government schemes and government benefits. So it's very important that we look at that group of women as well, that how can we ensure entitlements in spite of them not knowing how to access digital media. So So basically, these are different factors attached to it when we talk about like digitalization and digital access, control, and behavior. So for example, now if we look at, how fake news is relevant, like even today, like people who like us, who are all the time dealing with digital media and, digital reports and digital, how to navigate through like proper correct information, also get we also tend to get like trapped by fake news. And we so one, and in one side the machinery is getting evolved so much, and the other side there's a very very limited reach when it comes to making people aware, and especially women aware about a digital media and how to use digital media. So when it comes to policy and policy like and the strategies, when we we do talk about digital media literacy for sure, but we do talk about how can you ensure entitlements and other rights to people who cannot access digital media. At this point of time in India, it is not possible to go through and throughout digitalized. We need to have non-digital avenues as well. So if somebody wants to get registered for vaccination, there be it there digitally, but there should be a non-digital way also of registering one for these kind of crucial services. We have also seen that when it comes to access and control, especially when this from last 2 years, this entire digital the entire education system has shifted digitally, and Gayatri was mentioning that how it impacted children in rural India, because the school, a space of school is just not for education, it's also source of nutrition, it's also source of going out of your own household and creating your own safe spaces and networks. So it's just reducing the whole educational institution only to classroom. I don't think it's justified. So I think especially in the rural India, there should be certain common centers where people can go and access, because at this point of time most of the girls are dropping out because they're not able to attend schools, and even this year it's continuing. So it's getting more and more difficult for them to continue with their education and live it, whether digital and non-digital. So there are certain fundamental challenges we have, which we need to definitely ensure. You cannot think of a larger strategy without ensuring certain realities and certain gaps, and which is very much there. So I think in India, we need to, when it especially comes to access and services, especially rights, about rights reaching to people, digital media literacy, along with digital media literacy, I think we need to have some non-digital avenues, and also to create that ecosystem, like getting e-sathis to help older women in order to access digital platforms, or digital ways to access or to get information, or students can be given stipends, e-stipends, in order to build their capacity on using digital media, and how can they create that peer learning efforts and that ecosystem. But but given in the time, I am really not very optimistic about like this whole digital push will make everybody digitally capable. I think it needs to be balanced. It needs to go hand in hand. It cannot be, I think in that way this is going more exclusionary. I think only people who can access digital media or internet are able to access a lot of things, including information, including resources, including including schemes, including other different accesses, where one group is totally getting left out. Maybe they're not getting even enough information about the particular scheme which is more beneficial to them. So yeah, to me it should be like we should revisit the entire thing, because of the pandemic things have changed a lot, and we have been physically distant. We are, you know, sitting in our own homes and trying to you know, have this conversation today through Zoom. But we also need to very well remember that a lot of people, and a lot of them do not know what is Zoom, and always being excluded from this entire discussion. And how do we basically reach out to them? How do we cater to them? So I think it should be our prime mandate at this point of time. And one thing I forgot to mention, that when we were talking about the digital media behavior, how one is people do not know how to use digital media properly. People also do not know how to you know, navigate through this whole violence in digital media, online violence. And we have seen that how you know, in the Zoom bombing started, like that was something very new to us. Last year we realized that, oh, you know, people are showing their private parts in the Zoom meetings, the like serious Zoom meetings, or like even online classes. There were so many harassment things. So yeah, my 10 minutes is over. So I mean, yeah, there is just so many components there, and I just try to touch upon everything. If you have any question, I'm happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Barsha. I think that was really well put up, and I really like the point on having more non-digital avenues as well. Moving forward, I would now like to invite Ms. Vandana Madan. She is an associate professor of sociology at Janki Devi Memorial College, University of Delhi. She began her teaching career in 1987. Her areas of academic interest include Indian society, history, culture, environmental issues, and gender. Her edited work, The Village in India, published by OUP, is on the social sciences syllabus of over 20 Indian and foreign universities. She has spoken at many national and international conferences over the past 3 decades and received the Best Teacher Award in Sociology from the University of Delhi in 2009. She has also been a consultant for the ICSE board and a member of several academic committees at the university, and has an abiding interest in educational reform and social transformation. So over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Aisha. And let me begin by thanking Gayatri for asking me to do this. And thank you, Jyoti, for being FES, because so much of the things that we want to do on gender and women, I think, are made possible by you. And Gayatri already mentioned the absolutely amazing work that FES is doing with the bystander program, which we are going to continue. But today, I think we are here gathered to talk about something really critical. And Barsha has addressed some of the very important issues, which are issues about accessibility and issues about entitlement and trying to create a stable, equal environment. And all of us, I think, there is nobody that this pandemic has spared. And we began by talking about living in a world of uncertainty. We then started calling it a new normal. And it was almost as if we had accepted living like this, like Gayatri said. And then I think today, in the present situation, we've come to the conclusion that this is a great leveler. Everybody's talking about how it's a great leveler. But I think that's where I would completely disagree. And Barsha has touched a little bit upon that, because this pandemic has not been a leveler. It has actually thrown up some of the worst inequalities and highlighted some of the most difficult terrains that people have had to cross. And I think we, yes, are seeing it in all parts of our life, but in the education sector, that is where we are really seeing such damage. That's the word I'm going to use, that there's such damage that's been caused by the pandemic. And yes, talking about the digital divide highlights where we are facing the problems, but not just talking about the digital divide. I think when you start talking about solutions, and as the title of our webinar today is about inclusion, when we start talking about inclusion, I think that's where that sense of divide really appears. That's where the sense of divide becomes even more obvious. Because when you start to talk of inclusion, the question that arises is, how do you include? Where do you include? You know, those are the issues that start coming up. Very quickly, before I talk about inclusion and the education sector, and I have been asked to touch upon what a educational institution can do, and I'll share the experiences that we have had as an institution, and our students are here today to share their own experiences. I want to just very quickly say, how do we understand digital divide? Everybody understands it, but I think just trying to define it, we usually call it a digital gap. We call it a digital gap between individuals. And when we say digital gap, we are essentially saying it is a gap in terms of opportunity, meaning what access you have and what you do not have. I think Barsha very nicely called it entitlement. Now, why are we concerned? As educationists, why are we concerned? We are concerned as educationists because those who miss out the chance to benefit from digital education because they have to use internet and the web, they are going to suffer future social, economic, political, emotional repercussions, cultural repercussions. They are going to suffer life opportunity and life chance repercussions. And that is what concerns an educationist. And I think the important thing for us to remember is that regardless of how we define what a digital divide is, it is negative for those who are affected by it or those who are subjected by it. So the question that arises then is, how do you reduce it? How do you remove it? What can you do? And in the world of education, what can you do? And I'm only speaking from my perspective as someone, as Aisha introduced me, I've taught for over 3 decades. Obviously, the immediate question is inclusion. What do you mean by inclusion and how do you create inclusion? Because we are talking of inclusion in relationship to internet. We are talking of inclusion in terms of ICT, in terms of use of technology. And I think even before we start talking about inclusion, we all agree that there is a divide, and that divide is not just a digital divide, it's the divide of the privileged and the underprivileged. And there is such a huge pitfall here. And once upon a time, when we talked of digital divide, people would essentially say, oh, it's about those who have internet and those who don't have internet. That is lack of access to internet services. Today, it's no longer about just lack of internet services. Today, it has also become about the device. And again, Barsha touched upon that, the gender divide in the house. Who gets to use the electronic device for class? Is it your brother? Is it you? Who takes the mother's phone for the online classes? And this adds to that distinction of the privileged and the underprivileged. And this huge gender question has actually added, it has added to the uh, unequal nature of educational services, because we have students, we know we have students who have to toss up, between classes because the whole family cannot afford more than one device, more than one gadget. So how do they do it? How do you play that balancing game so that everybody gets an equal education? And very quickly, if we just look back at some NSS data, for instance, 2017, 2018, the NSS had data which actually said, and it may not sound like a large number, but already before COVID, before the pandemic, we actually have NSS data telling us that close to 23.8% families did not have internet. Okay. Sorry, had access to internet. So that's a very small percentage, which means about 70+% of India did not have access to internet. We are talking about that 70+% of India, which today is having to, go traverse this course and find a way of making sure that their children are getting an education. Because everything for a year now has been online, classrooms are online, school is online, college is online. And I'll add something here which some may not be aware of, which is that under the new education policy, there is a very clear understanding that 40% of teaching is going to be online. And that creates the big question mark. And the big question mark it creates is, how will an education institute deal with this? And I can offer some answers, because when the national education policy says 40% of teaching will be online, it is assuming that all students have access to internet. So 60% of your teaching is offline in a classroom. God knows when we will have that again. We hope we are going to be able to do that soon. But 40% of it is not going to be online, but it is going to be offline. So the question is, how do you overcome that digital divide? What can you do? It's not something that we can answer at an individual level. The answer to this lies at the institutional level, and more importantly, as we all have understood by now, it's actually a matter of governance. It's going to be a absolute rehauling of multiple levels of the educational system to be able to give everybody a proper education. And at the end of it also, there will be students who will be left out. They are not going to be able to get that equal access, which is really the critical issue over here. And why will they not get that equal access? Because very simply, the issue is not just about access to internet, but I would use the word the costs of accessibility. What is the cost of accessibility, and how the gender divide actually plays into that cost, that entitlement that Barsha talked about. So for us as university teachers, suddenly this thing was thrown at us, a new paradigm. We had to suddenly rethink our classrooms, because in March of 2020, we were told we are going online. None of us had ever taught online. Yes, we had maybe been to seminars, but teaching online meant completely reinventing yourself as a teacher. That is the word I would use, because uh, that sector Barsha mentioned, where you must have a non-digital sector. We have always survived non-digitally, because for a teacher, her students are really her motivation. For a teacher, the response of the student and the engagement with a student face to face, talking to you, touching you, reaching out, walking to a chalkboard, having a dialogue in class, all of that has been taken away from us. We do not have that. And I know personally how much I have had to rethink my interaction in the classroom and reinvent myself as a teacher, because I have had to find different ways of connecting with the students and different ways of motivating students. And for a teacher, the toughest thing and probably the most important thing is to be able to bring a student to class and to have a student in class. And what Zoom and Google Meet and WebEx have done to us is, yes, our student is in class, but we do not know if that student is actually there. So it's been a real reworking. And very quickly, so that I don't overshoot my time, what have we done as an educational institution to try and help students cross over some of these problems? Of course, I want to say over here that in all of this, probably the biggest shock has come to students who joined college in first year. And many of them are here with us today because I don't think anywhere in their life they would have imagined that this is what college was going to be, because they had a completely different view of what university life is going to be. And it was definitely not sitting in bed in their pajamas staring at a laptop. I don't think they ever envisioned that. But what have we done? The first thing that we did as an institution was we reached out to students who could not afford laptops. And we as an institution have catered to those students by giving them laptops. They have been loaned laptops because it was felt that as an educational institution, how do you bridge the gap? As Gayatri said, the topic would be, how do you bridge the gap? So giving students devices, that was one of the first things that was done. Had teaching been partially online in college, meaning on site, the other thing the institution had done was it created Wi-Fi accessibility to all students by having Wi-Fi hubs. We have Wi-Fi hubs, and I think this is for the future something very important, that all educational institutions should have Wi-Fi hubs where students can come into college and they still can at least use the Wi-Fi hub in sanitized environments. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, in the US, in parts of California, they have come up with a fascinating idea called rolling student study halls. And what they do is they have buses which drive into a district where you have students living. For example, if it was Janki Devi, a lot of our students come from Karol Bagh and from East Patel Nagars. So a bus would come into a common area and the bus would be carrying internet. And students are able to hook up to the internet and they are able to work through that. So that is something we obviously haven't done, but we have created these hubs for the students. And some students have come into college and tried to study from college. Other than that, what the educational institutions have tried to do is they have uploaded class material, lectures, seminars, readings, which students are able to access both online as well as offline. So that would mean that even if you do not have internet at a particular time, a lot of this data is uploaded on the college websites. And it is also made available to the students in the form of a classroom section on the websites, and the teachers also share this information. I think the other very important thing that has been done, and the students here can vouch for that, all their reading material has been mailed to them. It has been photostated for them. It has been packed for them. Those who live both outside Delhi and in Delhi, because nobody is moving around, the college has made an effort to make sure that every student has their reading material so that when they come into class, when they have the internet accessibility, they at least, even if they miss the class, they have the material before them. And I think Google Meet is what we use as a platform. It has really helped in that, if necessary, teachers are able to upload material which is once again available offline. So there are ways in which the system has tried to assist. We also have ebooks, we have textbooks if the students require them. And another very critical thing that educational institutions at Delhi University have done is they have actually created domains, college domain names. So as a result of it, every single student of the college has a college identity. They have a college domain related identity, and they can access the college domain from any part of the country. That's what they are able to do. And if they do it and if they require material, they're also able to access that material. Um, Other than this, I think, I mean, there are so many other things, but we don't have too much time to discuss them. But what I would like to say is there's a big role that society has to play here. And Varsha addressed the issue of the gender gap. And I think that is a very critical role, because that gender gap within the family has had a massive impact on educational entitlements, if we want to call them, or very simply the access to education. The brother always gets first dibs on the laptop or on the phone. And we really have to, as a society, talk about that. We have to really think about what we can do about that. And I would also say, and this would be the last thing that I would say, and I'm happy to take questions or to have a further discussion. There is something very critical that has been lost. And that something critical that has been lost is not the fact that maybe there are students who are missing classes because they don't have internet access. What has been lost is not the fact that their attendance is minimized or whatever, but what has got lost is the fact that your educational institution is a safe space. It's a very important zone in your life. And it is a zone where you come, you interact with others, you learn from that interaction, because so much of what you learn in your life as a young school student or a college graduate is learned from your interaction with others, personalized, one-to-one, collective interaction. And the college is a space where you have that interaction. A school is a space where you have that interaction and it's gone. And that interaction and its absence is going to play a very critical role in the kind of young minds that are going to come out of school and college in the next few years, because these are crucial years. For a first year student, it's a very crucial year. This is where you define friendships, this is where you define direction, this is where you discover yourself. And I want to add over here that the college as a safe space is not only a safe space in terms of your being able to be who you are, But there is so much sociological study that has been done on life in slums, life in homes, which will tell you that very often for children in slums, who live in slums or who live in lower class neighborhoods, and let me just say all neighborhoods, very often school or college is a place where you run away to from the domestic violence that happens in your home. And the school is a place where you not only find, or the college is a place where you not only find the safety or sisterhood of your friends, but there is a sharing. There is a sharing that allows you to cope, and that is gone. So, that I think is an equally significant loss. And I will stop over here. And thank you again for having me, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Before starting with the presentations, we have a few minutes. If anybody has any questions, they can unmute themselves or they can mention it in the chat session. Anybody has any questions? I think we'll start with the student presentations now, and then you can mention your questions in the chat section. So I would like to invite Krishna Singh from Janki Devi Memorial College. Her topic is digital divide is not only a technological issue, but a social one. Krishna, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you share your presentation? I've enabled the share screen.
Yeah, I'm doing that. Just a second. I hope the screen is visible to all.
Yes, we can see.
Okay. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Krishna Singh. I'm from Janki Devi Memorial College, and my topic today on which I'm here to discuss is digital divide is not only a technological issue, but a social one. Before we begin, I think it is really important to know what digital world is. For a formal definition, digital world means the availability to communicate through the internet or on any other technological resources or technological devices. The availability of digital tools and digital literacy have made the world a global village. Why I refer to this is we know how much because of digital world and digital tools and internet and social media, the world has become an interconnected place. We know what is happening where, and we can share our ideas. The second thing that I feel which is important for us is to know that the importance of digital world. Before moving on with our discussion, the importance of digital world, according to me, and what I have so far inferred and seen, is empowerment of people. We know how empowering social media can be, and how people have in especially the youth in these recent years have voiced their opinion about the working of the society, the country, and when the policies are making, how are they rebut it or what their reaction is. The second is flexibility in work and life. We all know how flexible our life has actually been after the introduction of internet. You just need to pick up your phone and you can order food, clothes, online shopping, and so what, like digital banking. There's so much that you can do. So yes, because of digital world and digital technologies, our life has actually become more flexible. Easy access to information. You just need to pick up your phone or a laptop, Google any information. Everything's on Google, though there are a lot of fake news also, which you need to be very much careful about. Increasing social interactions. Of course, we know how much the interaction between the world has initially increased because of this digital world and digital devices. creation of wealth. Now, if you have the knowledge and the literacy to operate digital tools or formulate an app, you can definitely become a rich person. Especially, I would like to give an example of Byju's, platforms like Byju's, which are completely online, and it absolutely depends on your digital ability to formulate such apps. And that person is a billionaire today. Such a great thing for him. Well, now I would like to move on the topic that I have chosen, which is digital world in social arena. The first point that I would like to say is that no technology is homogeneous. What I mean is that every technology has a different impact on different social groups. In India, where there is inequality along with caste, class, region, rural, urban, the digital world has been adopted differently by different social groups. Of course, the digital divide has actually grown in different stratums of society because of this adoption of digital world differently by different social groups. It has created a digital divide that we further move on to. Well, what is digital divide? Digital divide is, again, if we go on the definition of digital divide would be distinction between people who have and who do not have access to informative and communicative technologies. But does that really mean a digital divide? The definition is appropriate in a country like India, again, where there is so much inequality amongst people along with lines of caste, class, gender, and so not. So is this definition really appropriate to describe the digital divide in India? Though digital divide, I think, and I feel has moderated traditional divide, but it has created new type of divides within society, which completely are dependent on the availability of digital devices. Like before, Vanna ma'am and Barsha ma'am has said that now that you actually need to have a digital tool in your hand to attend your college or school. So this has actually been a digital divide created by society. This actually is a digital divide that prevails in India and has prevailed, but it became very much evident during the amidst crisis of Corona. We can actually see that digital divide in working now. We see how many students are unable to access the digital devices and tools, and how they're not able to conduct classes and not be able to educate it, and they have to leave their dreams and all of that. So it becomes really, really disheartening. There are certain factors which actually determines digital divide: economy, education, aptitude, and risk-taking ability. Of course, we know if you have the money, you can buy the digital tools, and if you don't have the money, you definitely cannot buy them. Education, in a sense, you need a particular type of education to operate that device. You cannot operate that device without a particular kind of education. Aptitude, many people do have the education, but they don't have the aptitude to work through these digital devices and these digital tools. Risk-taking ability is another factor which I think is prominent, in sense that it depends upon you if you are ready to take the risk to invest in digital technologies, or if you're ready to take the risk of investing in digital platforms, such as if you are ready to do digital marketing, or if you are interested or are confident in doing digital banking. Like, I am not confident while buying things online very much. I am really scared. So people even need to have that risk-taking ability to operate these digital divides. What I have also found in society, that this digital divide sort of creates a distinction between classes and groups in society and different stratums of society. One type of distinction that I find is a typical type of distinction. The typical distinction, again, people who do have and who do not have the excess of technology. The second type of distinction that I have mentioned here, according to me, is the elite distinction, where technology becomes the source of distinction. Sometimes you show off your technology to be distinct from certain people, and sometimes you actually go in absence of technology to show yourself distinct from other people. Why I have actually got this distinction, and I have connected it with digital divide, because you would actually see how youth these days go around without a sense of identity, and due to this identity crisis that is so amongst our youth generation these time, we actually see how this technology plays an important role. Sometimes you're going to find people swaying their phones around, showing it off, or any other technological device. And sometimes you would even find people talking about that I am not into technology. That is also a part of distinction, where you have the availability of technology, but you don't carry it to show that, okay, I'm away from it, how it has actually detained ourselves. But you have the technology not in your hand, but yes, at home, or someone else operating that technology for you. So yes, that's it. I would like to end myself here. And if there are any questions, I am more than happy to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krishna. Next, I would like to invite Megha Sachdeva. Her topic is digital divide is not only a technological issue, but a social one. Megha, are you here?
Yes, ma'am.
Your share screen is still on.
Ma'am, is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Okay, so my topic is digital divide is not only a technological issue but also a social one. So I've begun my PPT by discussing what digital divide actually is. So according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, the particular definition is the economic, the education and social inequalities between those who have computers and online access and those who do not. So basically, digital divide refers to the gap between those who are able to benefit from the digital age and those who are not able to do so. So there are many advantages that internet has obviously offered us, but this is the imbalance of digitalization which exists and which causes digital divide. Further, of digital divide as a social issue, there are three basic causes, or I must say types, which lead to digital divide. These are access divide, use divide, and quality of use divide. So, as Gayatri ma'am in the beginning told us about about a girl who was pursuing her education from Lady Shri Ram College, University of Delhi. She committed suicide because her family was in a very bad situation financially. They were struggling to make their ends meet, and because of which she had to withdraw. Like, she could not study very well because she was not having a laptop. And as everything has become online these days, so it was causing a trouble for her. And the last thing that she wrote in a letter before committing suicide was that because of me, my family is facing many financial problems. I am a burden for my family, and my education is a burden. And if I cannot study, I cannot live. So on 2nd November, she passed away. She committed suicide, and this is what access divide is. That is that not everyone is able to afford a laptop and internet connectivity, because of which there are differences that are being caused. Then we come to use divide. Here is the concept of digital illiteracy. Like, there are people who do have access to internet, but then there is another issue that they do not know how to use it. Here there are gender issues and also age, which lead, because there are people who are older and they do not have so much of interest and even knowledge of using internet or laptops or any other platforms. So that is what causes use divide. Then I've talked of quality of use divide. Now again, there are people who do have access to the internet, but they are actually indulging in the wrong side, or I must say that they are misusing their for example, there are children who have access to internet, but then uh, it causes academic downfall to them because they are using social media platforms much more than they should do that, and that is why their academic downfall occurs. Then I've talked of consequences of digital divide. There is lack of communication and isolation. Like even in my own class, I've noticed there are kids who do not have access to internet in their area, and so they are not able to participate in in seminars or in even the casual discussions that we have in our unofficial groups. So that's how they are left behind. They are not able to cope up with everyone around them as compared to those who have very like who reply very frequently or who talk a lot with people because they have no issues in doing so. Then there are barriers to study and knowledge, like the coronavirus have affected digital divide in education. Students and teachers they lack of digital skills, and that is why they are not able to teach the way they used to do when things were physically happening. Then it also accentuates social differences. People who are who are very much talented to get a job, if the interviews were happening in person, or I must say in a physical situation, they are not able to cope up with the requirements when things are happening digitally. They are not able to do work from home very efficiently. That's why they lose their job, and that is how COVID-19 has affected the economy of India. Lastly, I'll be talking about overcoming of digital divide. So there are 5 basic things that I think can overcome digital divide in India. That is increasing affordability. That internet packs should be made cheaper, which they are not. Then empowering users. Intelligence should be provided to people who are not very much aware of the usage of internet. Then improve the relevance of online content, internet infrastructure development, and lastly the gender gap in internet access should be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Megha. The next 3 presentations are on the challenges to ensuring inclusive education during COVID-19 and its impact on education. The next student is Arpita Raj. Arpita, are you here?
Yes, ma'am. So, good evening, everyone. Firstly, thank you, Women Power Connect and Vandana ma'am, to give us opportunity to present our views. So, I am Arpita Raj, presenting my views on what are the challenges to ensuring inclusive education during COVID-19 and its impact on education. So, as we know, we are facing a global health crisis unlike any in this world history. The crisis that is killing people, spreading human suffering, and upending people's lives. But this is more than a health crisis. It is a human, economic, and social crisis. The coronavirus disease, which has been categorized as a pandemic by World Health Organization, is attacking societies at their core. The COVID-19 outbreak affects all segments of the population, and it's particularly detrimental to members of those social groups in the most vulnerable situation, and continues to affect population, including people living in poverty situation, persons with disabilities, youth, and indigenous people. Moving from the economy, the COVID-19 impact on education has been cruel, and its repercussion will be seen in the upcoming future. As per the report of World Bank, that there will be the lifelong impact on school closures on the productivity of this generation of students. Children being out of school for about 1 year might forget some facts as well, impact on their learning capacity. The impact of this pandemic has seen on how people learn, work, and live. How to adapt a system of education built around physical school is the most important challenge. At its peak, more than 188 countries encompassing around 91% of enrolled learners worldwide closed their schools to try to control the spread of the virus. School and universities closure have a very real impact on all students, but especially on the most vulnerable ones who are more likely to face additional barriers. Children and youth from low-income immigrant refugees, ethnic minority, and indigenous backgrounds with diverse gender identities and sexual orientations, and those with special education needs suffer by being deprived by physical learning opportunities. As I've mentioned, the disruption in education and learning could have medium and long-term consequences on the quality of education, though the efforts made by teachers, school administration, local and national governments to cope up with the unprecedented circumstances to the best of their ability should be recognized. One measure that has taken is that learning can continue through distance education, especially by digital means, without a student's physical presence in school, even though this entails some challenges. These challenges can affect various aspects of education, including the student-teacher relationship that is so crucial for student success. Also, in developing countries like India, with vast disparity in social economic backgrounds of students and the quality of education institutions, the shift has not been easy. The digital divide has been further widening the gap. The idea of digital divide is growing the gap between underprivileged members of society, especially rural, poor, elderly, and handicapped portions of the population who do not have access to the digital learning resource, like computers or the internet. The digital divide as a whole remains an enormous and complicated issue, heavily interwoven with the issue of education and poverty, and it needs urgent attention from both public and private sector players as the crisis continues. While the most vulnerable students might not have access to digital learning resources, some government and civil society organizations have provided them with computers or tablets as well as internet access, or have organized teaching through television, phones, or radio. A number of countries offer useful insights into some of the most equitable and inclusive solutions to provide access to digital learning resources and effective distance education. In India, in rural areas, online remains as aspiration. All India Radio and Doordarshan channel can be used to broadcast lessons, given that education is one of the three functions of the two agencies. Sorry. Those courses which need demonstrations and where observe physical activity is important can be broadcast on TV. There are two benefits from this. One, we will be able to reduce for our teachers and students the strain of having to stare at their screen endlessly. And two, with All India Radio and DD being free, the heavy drain on financial resources will be drastically reduced. As we have seen, the challenges we are facing with this global pandemic is drastically impacting our lives. As I mentioned earlier, the COVID-19 impact on education has been cruel and its repercussion will be seen in future. Though with some positive efforts, we can cope up with this crisis. Our capacity to react efficiently in the future will hinge on government foresight, readiness, and preparedness. Through their role in developing the competences and skills needed for tomorrow's society, education system will need to be at heart of this planning. This includes rethinking how the economic should be evolved to guard against adversity and defining the skill, education, and training required to support it. This also means working in close collaboration with both public and private sector. So we need to come together to fight with this global pandemic and hope for the better. Thank you everyone. Stay safe and have a nice day.
Thank you so much, Alpha. Next, we have Purvika. Purvika, are you online?
Yes, I'm here. I'll just be sharing my screen. I hope my screen is visible.
Yeah, we can see that.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. My name is Purvika Mammani, and today I'm going to briefly talk about the challenges that are in front of us while ensuring inclusive education during the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on education. As you can see on the two pictures displayed on the screen, the gap between those who could access the online teaching mode and those who could not had grew tangibly wider. So firstly, let's talk about Am I audible?
Yeah, now we can hear you.
Okay, I'll just restart my presentation. There was some lag, sorry. Um, So I'm just going to briefly talk about the challenges that are in front of us while ensuring inclusive education during the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on education. So through these two pictures on the screen, we can see how the tangible divide between those who could access online learning platforms and those who could not grew wider. Now let's firstly talk about the pandemic and its effect on our education. As we know that the onset of the COVID pandemic virtually changed our lives in a completely unprecedented manner. One of the biggest challenges that it posed was the overarching importance that technology and the online mode assumed in our day-to-day interactions and activities. Out of the many challenges that the online learning mode posed in front of us, some of them was the adjustment gap and the digital divide. The pandemic spurred the largest disruption in education, exacerbating the already existing educational inequalities all over the world and especially in our country. How to ensure equality of access, how to ensure availability of resources for students of every strata of society were questions posed before our education system. Given the low level of internet penetration in rural areas, the financial limitations of families, and the lack of technological resources for the students belonging to underprivileged homes, the gap between those who could adjust to the new way of learning and who could not grew wider. So, how can we help the students? I'm going to briefly talk about the who, the what, and how of this question. Now, firstly, let's identify who all are at the adverse end of the online education spectrum. There are broadly some categories that we can identify in our society. Firstly, are girls. Secondly, are differently abled students. Then are students belonging to low income families and students from rural areas. What are the challenges that are posed in front of our education while ensuring inclusive education for all these students? So, according to research, only 11% of households in India have access to a computer or the laptop. As we know that the pandemic period has proven to be difficult for both the parents and the children in terms of having access to online platforms for education. Proper internet and electricity connections continue to be a challenge for families in rural areas especially. There are additional concerns regarding the access to technological resources to girls in many families. In fact, Malala Fund research estimates that as a result of the pandemic, 20 million girls in developing countries may never ever return to classrooms, as girls are the first to be pulled out of school, put to work, and care for younger siblings when families face economic hardships, as many have during this pandemic. Another section of students that has been adversely hit by this pandemic are the ones with disabilities. The lack of accessibility features excluded from the online learning platforms has also excluded these children from being able to learn at home using the online resources. So I've compiled some suggestions that can help us to ensure inclusive education for everybody. How can the education be made inclusive and given the impact of the COVID pandemic? Firstly, there is a need to strengthen and increase the internet penetration in our country. There also needs to be usage of funds by educational institutions to aid students in accessing technological resources. There's also a need for curating a stimulus package by the government to ensure that economic inequalities don't worsen during the pandemic. We also need to invest in distributed energy resources to ensure the to ensure improved educational access. There also has to be involvement of civil societies and NGOs to help students monetarily and educationally. As the medium of learning has changed in today's times, it is imperative to ensure that students all across the spectrum are able to learn. There is no reason why a certain section of students should be made to feel inferior because of inaccessibility to educational resources. In the presentation, I have included some suggestions, as I just talked about, that can ensure inclusivity of education. But apart from all these suggestions, we can also do our bit by aiding the educational needs of one or more students around us who may be at the disadvantaged end of the spectrum. At the end, I'd like to say that it is only when we take a compassionate, empathetic, and holistic approach that we will be able to ensure education for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Purvika. Next, we have Nabiha. Nabiha, are you online?
I think Nabiha, we can't hear you.
Her mic is on, but we are not unable to hear. Nabiha?
Maybe there are internet issues because I think Nabiha is in Guwahati.
Yeah.
she's I think somewhere there.
So shall we move on to the next, and then we'll come back to Nabiha, and hopefully by then the internet issue will be resolved.
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Yeah.
Muskan, if you're here, would you drop a message to Nabiha?
Okay, so our next presenter is Kartika. Kartika. Her topic is on recommendations for improving learning and assessment systems during and post COVID-19. Kartika, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. I will be sharing my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My topic is recommendations for improving learning and assessment systems during and post COVID-19. It was in March 2021 when countries across the world began shutting down schools and universities temporarily as a measure to curb the spread of unprecedented coronavirus. And now it has been more than a year. Schools and universities are still closed. Schools and universities closure has not only shown us an undesirable and insignificant impression on the continuity of learning for more than 37.4 million young learners in India, but also endangered far-reaching economic and societal consequences. The structure of schooling and learning, including teaching and assessment methodologies, was the worst to be affected by the pandemic. First, here I would like to highlight some of the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic. The sudden shift to online learning without any planning, especially in countries like India, where the backbone for online learning was not ready and the curriculum was not designed for such a format, has created the risk for the most of the students to become passive learners, and they seem to be losing interest due to low level of attention span. Students face notice in developing new skills and maintaining achievements. Distance learning programs lack mechanisms for teachers to assess and provide feedback and formative guidance to students. Students face problems in obtaining end of cycle certificates, which lead to increased stress among students. New protocols for distance learning, online or otherwise, require teachers to rapidly change their practices, including daily tasks, responsibilities, and accountabilities. Needless to say, the pandemic has transformed the country's old chalk talk teaching model into one steered by technology. These changes in the delivery of education are pushing policymakers to figure out how to come with more effective and better learning e-learning solutions and how to tackle the digital divide. A multi-pronged strategy is necessary to manage the crisis and to build a resilient Indian education system in the long term. Now, here I would like to recommend some ways through which we can improve learning and assessment systems during and post COVID-19 pandemic. The first suggestion I would like to put is to commit to the strengthening of education as a common good. Education is a bulwark against inequalities. In education as in health, we are safe when everybody is safe. We flourish when everybody flourishes. The current crisis is reminding us how crucial public education is in societies communities, and individual lives. A strengthened commitment to education as a common good means awareness that we are educating not just children and young people, but we are educating the public. In addition, community engaged and lead learning is a key component of education and must be central to any strategies that addresses present and future challenges. Education is our most important vehicle to ensure individual and societal flourishing. Secondly, value the teaching profession and teaching collaboration. The center of any educational process is the human relationship with a student, between a student and a teacher. There has been remarkable innovation in the responses of educators to the COVID-19 crisis, with those systems most engaged with families and communities showing the most resilience. We must encourage conditions that give frontline educators autonomy and flexibility to act together. The third suggestion that I would like to put is to promote students, youth, and children participation needs and rights. Intergenerational justice and democratic principles should compel us to prioritize the participation of students and young people broadly in co-construction of desirable change. Compensatory assessment policies must explicitly take the most disadvantaged children into account and ensure the same level of access and the same capacity to adapt to new assessment measurements. The fourth suggestion is to protect domestic and international financing of public education. The pandemic has the power to undermine several decades of advances. National governments, international organizations, and all education and development partners must recognize the need to strengthen public health and social service, but simultaneously mobilize around the protection of public education and its financing. Lastly, I would like to suggest that the Indian traditional knowledge is well known across the globe for its scientific innovations, values, and benefits to develop sustainable technologies and medicines. The courses on Indian traditional education, traditional knowledge system in the field of yoga, Indian medicines, architecture, hydraulics, and agriculture, etc., should be integrated with a present-day mainstream university education to serve the larger cause of humanity. Moreover, I believe that our education system should adopt a hybrid culture with both traditional and physical schooling as well as the use of technology by both students and teachers in class. This will not only make it easier for both the sides, but also will be the beginning of new era in Indian educational system. In the post-pandemic world, homeschooling should be given equal importance as a physical format, because we all can observe that practically in the present scenario, homeschooling has been the only plausible option around the world. If planned well and given the space to grow, students can utilize the option of homeschooling as an alternative without the concern of lagging behind. COVID-19 presents us with a real challenge and a real responsibility. In this time of crisis, a well-rounded and effective educational practice is what is needed for the capacity building of young minds. It will help to develop skills that will navigate their employability, productivity, health, and well-being in the decades to come, and it will also ensure the overall progress of India. Thank you.
Thank you Nabiha, are you online right now?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you try sharing the screen?
Yeah, yes. Kartika, can you please stop sharing your screen?
Yeah, just a second.
Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry for the inconvenience. Okay. Good evening, Ms. Barsha Chakraborty, teachers, my fellow speakers, and audience. I am Nabiha Rahman. Today, I'm going to do a presentation on the topic, the challenges to ensuring inclusive education during COVID-19 and its impact on education. Okay. Let us all first understand what do we mean by inclusive education. Inclusive education means that every child is valued and receives a high quality and equitable education. Inclusive education is carried out in a common learning environment, that is, an education setting where students from different backgrounds and with different abilities learn together in an inclusive environment. It also about ensuring access to quality education for all students by effectively meeting their diverse needs in a way that is responsive, accepting, respectful, and supportive. Students participate in the education program in a common learning environment with support to diminish and remove barriers and obstacles that may lead to exclusion. On to the next slide. As we all know, very unfortunately, the world was hit by a deadly disease called coronavirus, also known as COVID-19 in 2019. And ever since, it has affected thousands of people, our day-to-day life, and disrupted the world in every aspect possible. Similarly, COVID-19 has affected a great deal on inclusive education and education as a whole. A holistic approach to education that addresses students' learning, social, and emotional needs is crucial, especially in times of crisis. The pandemic has increased the educational divide for many children and young people across the world. COVID-19 has disrupted education system on a global scale and creating unexpected challenges. According to report, approximately 1.6 million children around the world have been unable to attend school due to lockdown. Hence, school required to make rapid adjustment in the move to online teaching and learning. For students with a disability and additional learning needs, the move to remote learning has presented additional challenges, including barriers to engaging with technology, reduced access to educational support, and individualized learning intervention, and a loss of social connection. The, the current coronavirus pandemic is having a profound impact. Among the most important challenges created by COVID-19 is how to adapt a system of education, but adapt a system of education built around physical school. At its peak, more than 188 countries encompassing around 91% of enrolled learners worldwide closed their schools to try to contain the spread of the virus. School closures have a real impact on all students, but especially on the most vulnerable ones who are more likely to face additional barriers. They risk falling further behind and becoming isolated with school doors closed. The pandemic times, which blow around the globe, leaving no space untouched, they certainly have left a very memorable impact in the field of education. The impact of pandemic COVID-19 is observed in sectors around the world. The education sector of India as well as world are badly affected by this. It has enforced the worldwide lockdown, creating very bad effect on students' life. The education sector has been fighting to survive the crisis with a different approach and digitizing challenges to wash away the threat of the pandemic. In response to these challenges, many teachers and institutions have rapidly adjusted their practice and developed innovative approaches to provide inclusive education to all students, such as number one, access to and use of technology. Inequality in student access to technology during COVID-19 have been widely reported. For many students with additional learning needs, the increased reliance on technology during COVID-19 has contributed towards further challenges. But strategies such as providing students with teachers or education support staff phone numbers and ensuring online lessons are recorded so students can watch them in their own time repeatedly as needed were implemented. Number two, supportive schools, school responding flexibly to the needs of students and teachers are given importance. Teachers teaching in small towns and supporting each other with lesson planning and sharing of school resources, and this also helps in experiencing less burnout. Number three, passion and commitment of teachers. Teachers globally describe how strong their passion for the vocation and commitment to help students experience positive learning outcome has enabled them to cope with the challenges associated with COVID-19. Number four, moreover, many organizations are providing tools for children with disability and ethnic and linguistic minorities that include sign language and multiple language subtitles in remote lessons. In conclusion, the outbreak of COVID-19 has taught us that change is inevitable. It has been a challenge to education institutions in many ways and has hampered to a great extent, which led to a great amount of confusion, doubt, postponement, or delay in exam. There was also not enough space for co-curriculum. The digital world was a dilemma for both teachers and students. Though there were many negative impacts from the COVID-19 outbreak on the field of education system and its method uh, its method a step higher, the pandemic has opened gates to innovative methods of transmission of knowledge across the globe. However, it was very challenging to India as many people live in areas without internet and others attend more poorly equipped government-run schools. No doubt, many efforts are made to continue education at all levels with online methods, but it cannot be made available to everyone. Last but not the least, thank you for organizing this webinar on digital divide and letting me present my views on the topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nabiha. This was the last presentation. We are now open for a Q&A session. Anybody has any questions? Please unmute yourself or you can write it down in the comment section.
Is there any other student we've left out? Any one more presentation? I do have a comment. I think while we are waiting for other students, maybe they are thinking of their questions. But what I want to say is that I think after listening to you and one is, of course, it's very heartening to learn of the measures that Janki Devi College has taken to help students who are not able to access laptops by providing them and helping to bridge the gap. But my own feeling about this is that the change is going to be long lasting. And I think the change happened faster than anyone anticipated because of COVID. And it's going to be difficult. I think one of the students mentioned having to become passive learners because the internet doesn't offer as many opportunities for interacting. But I'm also very grateful for the suggestions that have come. And I would agree that it's largely the responsibility of the government to help bridge the gap, and NGOs and CSOs can contribute in that way. But first, stimulus packages have to be given for bridging the digital divide.
I don't think there are any questions or comments right now.
Gayatri, if I may add, I think a very important thing that would, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I think a very important thing we all must think about is something you just briefly touched upon, which is we've all been actually thrown into this without really knowing where we are going because of the manner in which everything happened. And, the education system, particularly, of course, everything, but when you look at schooling and when you look at education, if this is going to be long term, which it is going to be, we would have to do a whole rehauling of the education system.
I know, for example, at the workplace, the way we are grappling with it is the work has slowed down. And one of the students did mention that those who work from home, those who don't have access to digital technologies are going to find it difficult to continue with being able to earn a livelihood. But even workplaces are grappling with it, and there is going to be.
Sorry, I think I got disconnected.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I think, ma'am, we cannot hear you right now.
No, now you're on mute. Yeah. No, again, you are on mute.
I think
Again, she's on mute.
Issue.
Again, she's.
I'm actually getting automatically muted for some reason. I don't know if I can be heard.
No, you can be heard. We can hear you now. We can hear you.
Are we waiting for one more presentation?
No, ma'am. All the presentations are done.
Okay.
Okay. So we do have some comments on chat and a little bit of feedback. One of the comments is that long hours in front of the virtual screen has many health problems. And yes, I would agree with that totally. Okay, one question that is coming is, what is your opinion on hybrid schools and colleges, which have been in existence in many countries for a long time? But how long will it take in India to adapt to it? Will this apocalypse experience give that boost of motivation to make the change? This is from Ananya. Ananya, maybe you can unmute yourself and explain what is a hybrid school and college?
She says there is a bit of a mic issue, but she can type.
Okay.
But I assume this would be the same as hybrid workplace. Like, you know, you do part of the things online and the rest you do offline. We at FES have been talking about hybrid workplaces.
Okay, there's a question if we can speak a little in Hindi. Maybe Aisha, can you translate that question on hybrid workplaces in Hindi?
Sure about the
hybrid
मिला जुला
जहाँ पे ऑनलाइन क्लासेस भी होते हैं और ऑफलाइन क्लासेस भी, तो मतलब इंटरनेट के साथ भी और कॉलेज जाके भी ऐसे शुरू कर सकते हैं
कि आमने सामने बैठकर भी आप पढ़ाई कर सकते हैं और घर पे बैठ के आप टेक्नोलॉजी भी यूज कर सकते हैं, मतलब 50-50 चलेगा.
So sorry, I got disconnected, and this is, I think, the problem we face every day in class. You know, it's this that we are talking about today. And I don't know if earlier on what I was saying could be heard, but I just wanted to say that you know, the way the pandemic happened, we've all got thrown into this without really knowing what to do. And we're all learning on the way. And there are going to be hits and misses. And I can absolutely say that it has, for me personally, required a complete, as I said when I was speaking earlier, a complete rehauling of how I think of teaching. And I have also had to, become adept at technological knowledge and digital knowledge. And I deal in the classroom with students who have so many issues. Forget connectivity as an issue. I think what we are not talking about at all is how the home space is a very restricted space. And in that home space, where in the morning the mother saw the husband off, the children would go to school, the husband would go to office, and then the mother was there at home by herself in many homes. Today the father is there, the mother is there, the children are there, so the whole home space has got redefined. And I think in a lot of homes there are first generation learners, so the priority of what is important is also not recognized. So even if you're sitting at home and doing your class, your mother will very easily say to you, mera ye kaam kar do, because for her or for the father or for the grandparents, they don't recognize the importance of you studying out of home. So it's this whole thing is going to require a real huge, reworking of everything, including family relationships. And it's had a devastating impact. It's had a devastating impact because I think we have begun with the assumption, we are moving, there's an assumption that everybody has access. That's the problem. सबके पास, as somebody said हिंदी में, सबके पास access नहीं है. हम बहुत assumption के साथ move कर रहे हैं. हम ये मान के चल रहे हैं कि सबके घर में बिजली है. हम ये मान के चल रहे हैं कि सबके घर में उनके पास फोन है. लैपटॉप छोड़िए, सबके पास फोन है, नहीं है. और एक बच्चा अगर फोन पे बैठेगा, वो 12th स्टैंडर्ड का बच्चा फोन पे बैठेगा या 10th स्टैंडर्ड का बच्चा फोन पे बैठेगा, बेटा बैठेगा कि बेटी बैठेगी. और माँ का जो फोन है उसको कौन इस्तेमाल करेगा, क्योंकि पापा का फोन तो पापा इस्तेमाल करेंगे. सो it's a very it has social impacts, it has had cultural consequences, and like I said in my small discussion, major future consequences in terms of opportunities and life chances. We are looking to a very sad future for a whole generation. I'll stop with that.
I think the question on hybrid schools, maybe Professor Vandana couldn't take that.
There's also one presenter who's left, Gaura. I think
Is she left?
Yeah, she's
Yes,
left.
ma'am.
I think what we'll do then
Well,
is let's maybe we have Gaura's presentation and then we can conclude the webinar.
Yes.
Thank you for this opportunity. I thought the time was up. So today I will be speaking on the topic digital divide is not only a technological issue, but a social one. I hope I'm audible to everyone. So in simple terms, we can define digital divide as a gap between demographics that have access to technology, network and information and those who don't. The digital divide is considered a social issue due to the features of the demographics which do not have access to these means of communication or connection. As a society, it is widely acknowledged that most of the population who are underprivileged, poor, rural, elderly, handicapped, or belong to a marginalized group are the most affected by the inaccessibility. India has the world's second largest pool of internet users, about 600 million, comprising more than 12% of all users globally. Yet half its population lacks internet access. Even if they can get online, only 20% of Indians know how to use digital services, according to government data. In today's world, modern era, when technology plays such a crucial role in our day-to-day life, whether it is for entertainment, information, livelihood, or even menial tasks, it becomes imperative that these advanced resources and the knowledge required to operate these resources are available to all members of the society. Owning personal phones, laptops, computers, having a stable internet connection has become a must. However, we should also acknowledge that we live in a society where natural resources are divided unequally. Thus, there are many existing factors which create and widen the gap of this digital divide. Lack of education can be one example. It has been observed that those with college degrees or higher are 10 times more likely to have internet access than at work than those with only high school education. Educated people have a greater online presence and less hesitancy. Another such factor is income. Low income families lack affordability for resources. Due to lower income levels, poor neighborhoods lack infrastructure available in affluent areas. Privileged people reside in urban areas surrounding the hub of IT companies and abundance of opportunities as compared to less financially stable groups. Thus, we can see the lines of digital divide expanding between rural and urban regions. According to the 75th round of National Sample Survey conducted between July 2017 and July 2018, just 4.4% of rural households have a computer against 14.4% in urban, and with just 14.9% rural households have access to internet against 42% households in the urban area. Such numbers confirm the extent of India's rural and urban digital divide. Another such factor which is tied with the societal element is gender. As touched upon by Barsha ma'am and Vandana ma'am, there are clear indications of gender gaps in terms of internet literacy and accessibility. Due to patriarchal nature of the society, the gender norms of socialization often restrict or stymie access to network and information for women. Like I mentioned in the question, the comment I left, that a 2018 Harvard study in India identified a fear within society that women's mobile phone use would enable promiscuity or erode traditional Indian courtship norms. In this case, the problem is not only lack of infrastructure or resources, like Vandana ma'am said, but the arbitrary rules built on the foundation of primitive norms, which deny access to them. All these variables are more often than not intertwined in nature. Lack of education among women can lead to their literacy and ability to navigate limit their literacy and ability to navigate a mobile phone. The lack of education is often a result of financial instability in lower income households and poor households. Thus, the reason for digital illiteracy are all connected in a way. Many sociologists define the digital divide as a phenomena which is entrenched with the idea of social exclusion and inequality. The existing inequality provides power and resources to a group of individuals belonging to a higher class who monopolize access to opportunities and resources. This divides the population into two groups, as also mentioned by Krishna, the haves and have-nots. This may also be the case with digital access. Like, for example, telecommunication facilities are more readily available for wealthier communities and are more attractive for developing companies to establish themselves. As a result, poverty in less fortunate neighborhoods make it less appealing for investment by outside companies and thus further aggravating the divide. Well, there is no doubt that there hasn't been a growth in number of wireless subscribers in the country over the past years. But this growth only indicates the rise in basic telecommunication facilities. Services such as online classrooms, financial transactions, and e-governance require access to the internet as well as the ability to operate internet-enabled devices such as phones, tablets, and computers. As many as 80% of the Indian students couldn't access online schooling during the lockdown. And many might not return to classrooms when they reopen, according to a recent study by Oxfam. We were faced by this reality of equality in our country or around the globe for that matter during the pandemic, which rendered the unprivileged even more vulnerable. Many socioeconomic and cultural political factors weigh in when we discuss the digital divide in the country like India. We should understand that it is a multi-dimensional phenomena, and thus it is of paramount importance to comprehend that it is not only a technological issue but a social one. Again, thank you for this opportunity.
Thanks, Gaurav. appreciate all the student presenters for the valuable inputs that you have made. I think the recommendations that have been made have been well thought of. And yeah. There was any last words from anyone? Maybe Jyoti or.
I mean, I could, Gayatri, just say that I would like to say that thank you for doing this, because I think when we're talking of recommendations, we somehow always think of top-down recommendations, and it's so important to listen to the real stakeholders. And the stakeholders here are young people, young students. They've been the real stakeholders, and I think it's been a devastating impact on the educational sector. And all of us, civil society, government, educational institutions, social economic institutions, family institutions, we all have to get together and find a solution so that in the long run, we aren't going to lose out on a generation of learners who did not get what education should be like. I really, really feel that. And I know FES and WPC does so much work on it. So in any way, if we can contribute, we will be so happy. Thank you for doing this, really.
Thank you. And I remember what you said about first year students, and I'm just remembering how excited I was to join college the first time and go out. And it's really a way to get out of the home, and you think of it as a place where you have fun. Yeah, this year nobody expected you'd be in your pajama looking at us computer.
Yeah, fun and freedom. And I was talking to my students one day and I was saying, I'm sure your idea of the first year in college would be a lot like what the Hindi movies also made it out to be. And it's been a complete wet, damp squib, It's it's okay for a little while. But I think then you also get bored of being in your pajama. You need a life, you need the friends, you need that interaction. It's so critical to your growth. And these young people are completely missing it out. And it's so sad, so very sad.
Jyoti, any last words from you? Then maybe we could conclude.
No, I completely agree with Vandana ma'am that it's been a very difficult year for everyone, and I guess we all acknowledge that the road ahead is still, is not easy. There are kind of challenges that we still are, the challenges that are staring at us, and one has to kind of keep the strength and keep going, make the most of what is, and make the most of the digital spaces, and just kind of sometimes one has to also be a little stoic about things that are around us. There's just nothing anyone can do about it. So yeah, just wish you all the best. Keep the strength, keep the positivity, keep the cheer alive, and keep going. Thank you.
Absolutely, and please stay